18. All right, through my study for this, I have flopped back, and then now I'm back in the same position I always was before we came to the new position that I adopted later. If any of that makes sense, you can go ahead and let me know what it is. So we'll cover that today. Josie, I left it up here just for you. Thank you. All right, here we are. We are in the vial cycle. And then we'll hit the final cycle next week. Today, we're going to talk about Revelation chapter 18. Here's what I'm not going to be definitive on what Revelation chapter 18 is talking about. It's clear what Revelation 17 is talking about and what Revelation 18 is talking about. There are a few possibilities. The first is that Revelation 18 is talking about the same Babylon as chapter 17. They both have some scarlet and purple. However, the kings of the earth hated the Babylon in verse 17. Well, hated the whore. Chapter 18, they love Babylon. It's clear that chapter 17 is an ecclesiastical Babylon, or church religious system Babylon. Chapter 18 is more of a government system / power, seat of power. So we could be talking about that. It'd be very fitting if we were to talk about the image, the head of gold, the chest of silver, the abdomen of brass, thighs of iron and clay legs, mixed then coming out to two, and so it makes sense that chapter 17 would be one of the legs destroyed, then chapter 18 would be the new one. So as we read this, I'm going to point out some differences. We're not going to dive very deep in this one, but we are going to go talk about why I think. Okay, so that was one option. Was it's the same Babylon as 17. Second option is it's a different Babylon, just called Babylon. And if it is that case, either Babylon has to be rebuilt. It is talking about the seat of Arab power, UAE or maybe something of that nature. Or there are some people that believe maybe chapter 18 is talking about America or something like it. And but however, the Lord tarries another 500-600 years, will America still be in the position it is now? So that's why I hesitate to put America in something like this. However, we're going to go somewhere else in the Old Testament that I think is pretty cool. I think is talking about America. I do think it's talking about nuclear war. So I'm not going to have as many answers for you today. Chapter 18 seems like it's going to be one of those things when you get there, you'll know. Luckily, we won't be there for it. And all right. Everybody ready?
Yes.
Thank you, Brooke.
I said it too, just not as loud.
What? I know. How'd you word it?
I said, yep.
All right. Chapter 18, verse 1. So first we find that Babylon the Great is destroyed. Now, chapter 17 was talking about Babylon being destroyed and being burned with fire. And so now here in verse 1. And after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven. Now the question is, and after these things, is it talking about these things, chapter 17? Or is it talking about these things, chapter 16? And I don't have a good answer for that one. And came down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lighted with his glory. Remember, glory means light. And so heaven is going to be so glorious, there's no need for the sun. But also, when we talk about glorifying God, what we're doing is reflecting the light of God back onto other people. The sun is so glorious that we see the moon at night, and what we see from the moon at night is the glory of the sun. And so just remember that. But verse 2, and he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, is fallen. Now notice it's mentioning there twice. Double phrases tend to emphasize, or used to be there for emphasis and certainty. Isaiah does it, Jeremiah does it. 25 times, verily, verily is used in John, and you know about those. So, we're talking about Revelation 18. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to say who it is, but we'll keep on going. And has become, is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Which tends to lead to the spiritual, which could lead to chapter 17, but I still don't think it does. The Antichrist will use this political system to rise to power. So remember, when you hear people all worried about one world government, one world religion, one world currency, part of the reason is because the Antichrist will unite the world under those things and bring unity, and everybody's going to love them. And but however, with unity comes the ultimate in control. And so just things that they'll need to watch out for. Verse 3, for all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Remember that fornication in chapter 17 referred to false teaching. It could be here the same. And the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. This statement is the same as Revelation 17:2, which could also lead to him being the same thing. And the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. Now, we could suggest reading, like I did last week, the Vatican Billions, or 2 weeks ago. Back in the last couple decades, the number is that the Catholic Church spent well over $1 billion on sex abuse cases, and you don't see really very many Catholic churches having bake sales right now. So they have cash. But anyways, verse 4. But going back to this, when it talks about the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of their delicacies, you don't think about the Vatican or Rome when you hear that statement. Right now, that would be more like maybe America, maybe China. And then, if we're going to talk about this being connected to Babylon, there's some people who believe Babylon will be rebuilt. However, the Euphrates River is now 14 miles away from where it was when Babylon was destroyed. Through the irrigation and different things that have happened. So if you want to go to the Middle East, maybe want to talk about Dubai or something of that nature, you could. But however, Dubai still doesn't produce much, except oil. And so then verse 4, and I heard another voice come from heaven saying, come out of her, my people. So that could either be talking about present day, or it could be talking about them at this people, at this time that it's referring to in the tribulation. They be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues. So then that would refer then to the tribulation time. 2 Corinthians 6:17 says, wherefore come out from among them, and be ye separate, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing, and I'll receive you. So, the Lord does warn against certain type of associations. Look here at verse 5. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. As much as we talk about America being the greatest nation on the history of the world, we do have some pretty harsh realities that I think that God is going to judge America for one day, whether it be slavery or how many die a day from abortion, just the senseless slaughter of the unborn. Which, by the way, when people talk about need to keep it legal for cases of rape and incest. Rape and incest accounts for less than 3% of all abortions, 97%. And by the way, this isn't just something I just looked at a pro-life website and looked at. Even their numbers say that 97% of all abortions are elective. It's a form of birth control, and a fetus is sucked out of a womb. And I don't think that we could probably consider getting away with that forever. But remember her iniquities. Our countries had a lot of them. No countries went without them, and certainly we have them as well. Now look at verse 6. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her double according to her works, and the cup which she hath filled, fill to her double. And so Galatians 6:7 says, God is not mocked, whatsoever man soweth, that shall he also reap. So God does keep track. All the blood of martyrs, all the murders, the lies, the deceit are going to be paid back at this time, but however, double. Verse 7, how much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For she has said in her heart, I sit a queen, and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. We're going to flip over to Jeremiah chapter 50 and 51 in just a moment, and that phraseology is going to sound a little bit familiar. And so talking about somebody who, I don't have time for mourning. I don't have time for to look at my sins. I don't have time to confess things. But now here, look at verse 8. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day. So there's going to be a quick destruction of this Babylon. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine. And she shall be utterly burned with fire. Using the same terminology. Burned with fire. For strong is the Lord who judgeth her. Understatement of the century. The term we would use for that, you put your glasses on the end of your nose, and we would say omnipresence. Verse 9. So now, the earth laments Babylon's destruction. You're about to see two different reactions to Babylon being destroyed. Verse 9. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her. And so we're about to find here is we're going to find first they're merchants. The Vatican doesn't have a lot of output. A merchant is somebody who's a go-between, right? A merchant isn't generally somebody who produces and sells. Correct? You go to Walmart, the merchandise. Walmart didn't build that. The person standing there last night, Ashley couldn't, the car wouldn't start, and I needed a pair of jumper cables. And headed over to Walmart at about 11 o'clock, and apparently there's copper in jumper cables, and I had to stand there for about 20 minutes waiting for somebody to come unlock the stupid thing. And but anyways, that person who came and unlocked it wasn't the person who made the jumper cables. And so the Vatican doesn't have output. The Babylon in chapter 17 doesn't have output. We have output. China has output. Different places have different outputs. But however, so notice here, shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning. And I'll show you what I think that burning is going to be and why I think chapter 18 might be talking about us, but I don't know. So now their source of wealth and power is gone. Verse 10, standing afar off for the fear of her torment. Wait. So those people heeded the Lord's warning and stayed away. Christians don't even do that. It's kind of like, remember we talked about don't miss it at the resurrection? It was Pilate and the two other people around there said, hey, remember how that deceiver said that he's going to rise again on the third day? Let's make sure we have a guard around there. But yet Jesus appeared to the disciples and they're like, huh? And here, Jesus said back, or the angel said, get away from it. Back there, just a couple verses ago. And where was it? Verse 4, and I heard another voice come from heaven saying, come out of her. So, again, God's people not listening, but here you have the people, the people who were getting rich offered, they took off. Let's see. All right, saying, alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. So 1 hour, this happens quick, and everybody sees it. All right, verse 11. Now, see, here we go. And I was talking about the word merchants, and we haven't even gotten to the word merchants yet, did we? So I'm getting ahead of myself in my notes. Sorry. Verse 15. The merchants of these things, which were made rich by her, shall stand afar off for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing. So the people who are getting rich off of this city. By the way, the merchants are more wise than God's people during this time, and they took off, and they're told to. 16, and saying, alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet. See, there we go back to the purple and scarlet. So maybe it's referring back to 17, but I don't think so. And decked with gold and precious stones and pearls. Look at verse 17. Which, by the way, when you say, well, no, it just says it's one city, but it also says that the city is clothed. So give a little bit of leeway here. Cities aren't clothed with, these things. So it could be larger than a city, or, maybe talking about something like New York, Beijing. For in 1 hour, so great riches has come to naught. And every shipmaster and all the company in ships and sailors, and as many as trade by sea, stood afar off. Man, we're going to be done super early tonight, aren't we? What?
Did you mean to skip from 11 to 16?
No, did I?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Whew. That good, because that proved the point right there. verse 12. See in my notes, 11 through 14 is grouped, and I usually don't group them. Verse 12. All right. The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and of pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and all thine wood and all manner of vessels of ivory and all manner of vessels of precious wood and of brass and iron and marble. And so, we're talking about, we live in such a way. It used to be that bathtubs weren't something that was commonplace. They thought bringing a bathtub into the house, that's just not very healthy. You're going to wash off bacteria, things of that nature. And they said, maybe you need a bath once a week, once a month, you're good. I don't know about any of you, but 2 a day, I'm pretty good. 2 different kinds of soap, one for deodorant, one for softer skin. I don't have to use shampoo, so that helps. But we live in a time and in a place in America where we could probably lose 90% of our stuff. What are you laughing at me for?
She was laughing.
What are you laughing at me for? Mrs. Don't fold your clothes right away, apparently. Oh. Where was I? At all. So what, you dump baskets on the bed or on the couch?
Look for the wrinkly, freest shirt you can find.
We never do that at our house.
I don't even do laundry now. It's okay.
What?
I don't even do laundry now. It's okay.
She does it all?
Yeah.
They don't have, no. Anyways, where were we at? Oh, we could probably lose 90% of our possessions. Matter of fact, maybe even more than that, and be fine. We live a life full of luxuries. Now, I'm not getting on your case for that at all. I'm not, hey, we need to give those things up. No, I'm glad that we have a dishwasher. Glad we have a clothes dryer, and we don't have to walk down to the river. I'm glad that I can turn a knob and water just magically flows out of this thing, out of the wall. And you guys need to get one of those rain heads instead. It's rain. It's nice. And but things we could live without. But however, we look at this list. I think most of our houses have gold. Most of them have silver. Most of them have precious stones. Most of them have pearls or something like it. Most have fine linen, purple, silk. I'm sure we have silk and scarlet. I'm not sure what whatever that wood is. Vessels. I doubt any. I have a bunch of ivory at my house because people keep on giving me keyboards but anyways. But I have some brass. I have some iron, and I have some marble. Let's see, cinnamon. No big deal. It's something that we now just eat by the spoonful and watch our kids, cough it out on internet challenges. And odors and ointments and frankincense. I mean, this is your medicine cabinet. And wine, hopefully not. And oil. I got some 5W30 out in the garage. And fine flour, we have that. And wheat and beasts and sheep and horses and chariots. Matter of fact, chariots, we got stuff better. Which, by the way, if you were describing a vehicle 2,000 years from now, what would you call it? Oh, that's a car. Well, what's it going to look like 2,000 years from now? And slaves, okay, maybe not. And souls of men, which, by the way, souls of men, with those kind of luxuries, you have people selling their souls in order to have it. All right. And the fruits that thy soul lusteth after are departed from thee, and all things which were dainty and goodly are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all. All right, now we'll do verse 15. The merchants of these things which are made rich by her shall stand afar off for the fear of torment, weeping and wailing. All right, we already did verse 16. Okay, verse 17. For 1 hour so great riches has come to naught, and every shipmaster and all the companies and ships and sailors, and as many as trade by sea stood afar off. So even sailors now had enough sense to move away. Anybody here a sailor related to somebody in the Navy? Your dad, right? Okay, I can still make fun of that then, right? See, what would be the irony of me being the only veteran in the room making fun of another branch of the military, then somebody getting mad at me for that when that's what people in the military do? So, yeah. What? Squid. Well, no, when we see some in the Navy, I think, well, what, you couldn't pass the test? Then, other people, Army, holy cow. Anyways, all right, let's keep on going here. Judd's thinking, man, Judd, how'd you get roped into this? Why are you off today?
Days all this.
Oh, so it's not a day off. Days all this month. Man. So we're going to see you next Wednesday, too. Oh, poor Judd. Verse 18. And cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, what city is like unto this great city? So just hugely unique. And they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city, wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by the reason of her costliness, and in 1 hour she was made desolate. So again, you can see how there's a connection between this and the Babylon in 17. Burned with fire, scarlet and purple. But other than that, this is a different thing. People aren't made rich off the Vatican. I mean, some are, but there's no ports at the Vatican to haul stuff in and out. So I think that kind of eliminates it, unless something else pops up later. But I'm going to show you something here in a minute. All right. So there we see the world's reaction to Babylon being destroyed. Now we're going to find heaven's reaction to Babylon being destroyed. And if we were to lose all of our stuff and go to heaven, then we'd think that's a wonderful thing. And that's basically what's happening here. Look at verse 20. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her. So this is the prayer of the martyrs in the fifth seal answered. Remember Revelation chapter 6, the souls under the altar? Which, by the way, would also bring some of the events that are being avenged into the... So if we look and say, well, America hasn't really killed all that many Christians, maybe it's different during the tribulation. Let's see, verse 21. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone, and cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. So you throw a great stone into water, it'll make quite a splash, but then the stone disappears, and it's then underwater unseen. And so the imagery here is that Babylon will be hit, it will be destructive, it will be quick, and then it will not be seen. Verse 22. And the voice of harpers, and musicians, and of pipers, and of trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in thee, and no craftsman, and whatsoever craft he be shall be found any more in thee, and the sound of a millstone shall be heard no more at all in thee. All factories will be shut down, all production will be shut down, no farming, no anything, everything will be over. Verse 23, and the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee. Most of us don't have candles, and our electrical grid will be destroyed, and so that means also your flashlight won't work. And the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. So a life invested in the world, we learned, is wasted. A life invested in Christ will result in more things in heaven. We've already talked about that. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, and for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. Which sorceries then brings in kind of an interesting question. What's it talking about? And remember, then Ephesians tell us we fight spiritual wickedness in high places. And man, you're so excited. We're about to hit the last verse, not knowing we're about to go to a different chapter. Verse 24. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all that were slain upon the earth. So it could be, there are hints in there that this is talking about the same Babylon as chapter 17. However, it seems to be agreed upon generally that chapter 18 is different and talking more of a commercial or government Babylon in chapter 18. And so it seems to be different. I think there are different things. I didn't think there are enough things to be different. I do think it's possible that chapter 18 is talking about us, talking about America. And I'm going to show you why real quick. Let's go back over here. So let's just cover this time frame. So remember, the rapture is going to happen here. We're going to meet the Lord in the air. That is a different thing than the second coming. Second coming happens over here. There are just so many stark differences here. We'll meet him in the air. The world will not see Jesus Christ. We're going to be raptured out, meet him in the air, and then will we ever be with the Lord. When he comes back here, we'll return back with him at Armageddon 7 years later. So, in this time here, the Antichrist will be ruling and reigning on earth. I'm not sure how long it'll take from the rapture till he takes power, but I imagine it's going to be a little slightly gradual, but kind of quick. You know, everything that people have been striving for is finally going to happen. Unity, this one world religion, this one world government, which, by the way, I would vote for one world religion, one world government, because it just means the Lord's about to come back. It's nothing to be scared of. However, it's not that I'm not going to adopt that stuff. You know, Europe comes pretty close now. We talked about that growing up, how Europe one day could be this one thing. Well, it is this one thing. It is Europe, it is different countries, but yet it's still the EU, and they have one currency for every country, I think, except for England, right? Does anybody know that? I think England still has the pound.
It's a euro, isn't
Right, but doesn't England still have the pound?
it? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know if they ever went to the euro. Hey, I never thought about that. I used to have francs and all sorts of things. That would be the French dollar. So anyways, during this time, there's going to be such peace that the treaty is going to be confirmed that's already there for the Vatican and between Arabs, Muslim world, to where a temple is going to be built either next to or where the mosque is now in Jerusalem. Imagine that. Could not happen now. Couldn't even come close to happening now. But there's going to be such peace that's going to happen because, remember, the Antichrist will have to be standing in the temple at Jerusalem at the midway point of the tribulation. So within 3 years, we know that the Antichrist will be at least risen to power and will at least have the temple built and at least will stand in there and proclaim himself as God. So during this time, there's going to be such peace that wars and rumors of wars is now going to matter. Because like right now, if we're rumoring that we might go to war with this country or with Iran, you know, there's always been wars up until this point. There's always been rumors of wars up to this point. So when Jesus said there would be wars and rumors of wars, he wasn't talking about now. He was talking about the space here is going to be so peaceful, there will be no war, no rumors of war during this time. Everybody's going to be hunky-dory. You pesky Christians are gone. They're going to be living in your house, driving your car, eating your foods, eating your snacks. You know, all that sorts of neat stuff that you have laying around. You want to talk about squatters' rights? They're taking over. It's going to be a great time. Homelessness will be solved by the rapture. Right? All those people gone. It was like Thanos came along. Am I pronouncing it right? Thanos? Whichever. Snaps his finger and all of a sudden, hey, Christians are gone. Well, that's a good explanation. That's going to be the best they come up with, by the way. Maybe they're in the same place as the Mayans. Maybe Thanos snapped his fingers and now they're gone. Thanos. And so it's going to be a peaceful, grand time. You know, when we paint the tribulation, well, the first half of the tribulation, which really isn't called the tribulation in the Bible, when we paint it as this big, horrible thing, you know, all of a sudden there's going to be a strong delusion that that's all, folks. You know, there's going to be a strong delusion they might believe a lie. First 3.5 years, they're going to think back to all the times you talk about how bad the tribulation is going to be. Somebody will maybe suggest that they're in it and say, man, this is pretty cool. Another thing those Christians were foolish about. This guy isn't even called the Antichrist. So, when this happens, then Satan will enter into the Antichrist, which is the first beast, which rides on the scarlet, first beast, scarlet, how come I can't think of the word? First beast, the rides on, whatever. Chapter 17, no, I was talking about last week. And so now we are at a point where all war, all hell is breaking loose. All the cycles, all the third and fourth seals, the trumpets, the beasts, the vials, everything's happening, and things are just going haywire. So now we get into Great Tribulation, the second half. You see the words down there. All right, so with that, I'm going to give the second half of this lesson that even my pastor disagrees with, because he says we are so cocky as Americans, we think that we have to be part of God's end plan. Well, I'm sorry, but the stage is being set. I'm not saying the Lord's coming back tomorrow. I'm not saying He's coming back next week, next 10 years, next 15. However, there are things all throughout Scripture that were not possible to happen until the last 20 years. The whole scanning, all that stuff that's in there is now possible. FaceTime, it's kind of crazy what these things are. So, I'm going to present you maybe that chapter 18 is talking about America, but I will show you what I think is America in the Old Testament. Go back to Jeremiah chapter 50.
50, right?
50. And by the way, if you disagree with the lesson I'm about to give, I'm all for you. This is going to be somewhat opinion. By the way, I'm about to tell you that I think America is going to be hit by a nuclear attack and will not be able to counterattack. However, I also do not believe it's going to happen until after the rapture. So we won't be here for it. So, what I'm about to teach, it's not something you need to worry about. Of course, I remember growing up, that was my biggest fear in life all the time. You saw Reagan and Gorbachev meeting up and you heard about these summits and you're thinking, oh great, they're going to walk out of there and decide to push buttons. I thought that every time. I was 4th, 5th grade. But anyways. All right, so chapter 50, Jeremiah 50, 51, 52, talks about Babylon. But however, there are some things in here that aren't true for Babylon that are true for us. I would suggest, because you're not going to remember these and you're going to try to jot them down and put it together, I would suggest that you underline the phrases I'm about to give you. Chris, do you have them underlined? Some of them? All right. So imagine being Jeremiah, seeing as a prophet a nuclear attack. Let's go to verse 1. The word that the Lord spake against Babylon and against the land of the Chaldeans by Jeremiah the prophet. So it's against Babylon. Declare ye among the nations, and publish and set up a standard, publish and conceal not. Say Babylon is taken, Bel is confounded, Merodach is broken in pieces, her idols are confounded, and her images are broken in pieces. Those are kings and stuff of that nature at that time. All right. Let's look down at verse 9. Now, again, as we have you underline these things, you're going to say, yeah, Pastor, that's pretty weak. Until just we get to all of them, and you start looking and say, you might have something here. And even then, it's still weak. I wouldn't go on some internet forum and try to prove using this that America is going to be attacked by a nuclear attack. I wouldn't do it. Just stay away from it all. But however, all right, verse 9. For lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the north country, and they shall set themselves array against her. From thence she shall be taken. All right, so the north country, if you travel north far enough here, you get to Russia, and I think that's going to be a point that we're going to prove. But notice there, see their arrows? Underline their arrows. Their arrows shall be as of a mighty expert man. None shall return in vain. Also underline that one. None shall return in vain. All right, look at verse 12. Notice here these two words, your mother. Your mom. Underline your mother. So, Jeremiah is speaking to a country, Babylon, and then says your mother. Babylon doesn't have a mother. The U.S. does. England. Your mother shall be sore confounded. She that bare you shall be ashamed. Behold, the hindermost of the nation shall be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. Underline hindermost of the nations. Does that describe Babylon? Nope. Would it describe some country that's only been around for 243 years? Is that right? Yes. Yeah, I think 243 years would be hindermost. You ever watch the news? Watch the news and they show our president, things of that nature, and it's always our flag that's placed in the middle. Our flag is always prominent. Ours is always raised the highest. How do we get away with that? I'm glad we do. But how do we go to another country and pull that off? It's kind of arrogant, but whatever. All right, verse 16. This phrase will make more sense in a moment. Cut off the sower from Babylon, and him that handleth the sickle in the time of harvest. For fear of the oppressing sword shall they turn every one to his people. Now look at this in the last phrase. And they shall flee every one to his own land. Underline that. If you were Babylonian, you were from Babylon and you were Babylonian. If you live in America, it's not guaranteed that you're from America. You might be from somewhere else. All right, look at verse 23. How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How has Babylon become a desolation among the nations? Notice that hammer of the whole earth. Wouldn't you kind of think that we hammer and we back up and somebody on the other side of the country does something unjust, we go take care of it. Now look at verse 26. Come against her from the utmost border. Underline utmost border there. Does Babylon have an utmost border? Maybe it means the furthest north. I tend to think that this is talking about utmost border, Alaska. And we have an utmost border right there that can be crossed into. And so utmost border, when it's talking about coming from the north, is maybe talking about that. Again, you're sitting there saying, yeah, weak. I agree. Verse 37. A sword is upon their horses, and upon their chariots, and upon all the mingled people. How many different races of people do you think lived in Babylon in the Babylonian times? Babylonians and Jews. So we have mingled people. What do we call the melting pot of the world? Which is a good thing. I mean, come on, we have Mike here is half Mexican. Our church is a melting pot. And the Irish too, right, Chris? All right, look at chapter 51. And look at verse 1. I'm my own personal melting pot. Norwegian. I don't know what else. All right, thus saith the Lord, behold, I will raise up against Babylon and against them that dwell in the midst of them that rise up against me a destroying wind. You say, well, yeah, okay, destroying wind, nuclear blast, but we already talked about arrows, and this is the last time we mentioned a destroying wind. Let's go over to verse 7. And so underline the first part of verse 7. Babylon hath been a golden cup in the Lord's hand. Ooh. I'm not sure that describes the city Babylon. It certainly describes America here. We have been generous and sent out missionaries by the millions and spent money on getting people all around the world for the Lord's purpose. Verse 8. Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. So this is a sudden thing. Verse 9. So I would put underline suddenly if I was you. Verse 9. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, and again, underline this next phrase, let us go every one into his own country. We're fleeing this one and going to our own. All right, verse 11. Notice here, the first phrase, make bright the arrows. Gather the shields. So when you say make bright the arrows, okay, maybe they light their arrows before they fire them. Dukes of Hazzard style. Y'all remember the Dukes of Hazzard? I know Judd does. Remember at the beginning of Dukes of Hazzard when they took that arrow, lit it, and fired it? I always thought growing up, those things that grow that are weeds, and it looks like it has a corn dog on the end of it and has another thing coming. I thought that they were just picking those things and using them. And then you touch them and you're like, oh, that's all they're doing. And then you watch it when you're older and you're like, man, this is one of the cheesiest shows ever. Of course, now you can't watch it anymore. Where are you going to find it? Let's see. Make bright the arrows. So either they're doing it Dukes of Hazzard style, or there's rocket propellant and flying around. Verse 13, oh, that dwellest upon many waters, abundant in treasures, thine end is come, in the measure of thy covetousness. All right, let's keep going. Verse 53. Though Babylon should, look here, mount up to heaven. And so, That sounds a lot like a modern city, but maybe not. But now look at verse 56. Because the spoilers have come upon her, even upon Babylon, and her mighty men are taken, every one of their bows is broken. Now, imagine pulling that off in warfare, that you would break every arrow of your enemy. Do you think that's ever been done? And how would we do that now? How would we break these arrows that deliver a destroying wind and are made bright? How would every one of them be broken? Simple virus and hacking. So again, like I said, weak. But it's interesting. It doesn't describe the Babylon as we know it. However, it does describe something like us. Then you go back and read chapter 18 again, and it starts talking about those other things. And I don't see how, if the Lord comes back in the next decade, how America isn't part of it. But however, being destroyed, maybe that's why there's no mention of an army coming from that far west. Why would they? They're destroyed. Debbie?
You said this stuff's happening. It's happening after the rapture.
I think so.
That's what you're saying.
Everything that I've said,
See.
except for the nuclear war, definitely after the rapture. And if this is talking about a nuclear war, it's talking about Babylon, and if it corresponds with Revelation chapter 18, definitely after the rapture. If Jeremiah 15:51 is talking about nuclear war, but it's not talking about the Babylon of Revelation chapter 18, it could be talking about us. I don't know. Again, like I said, weak. Yes?
When it says the bows are broken, not the arrows, I was wondering if that's because, like you were saying, if it's from computers.
I didn't catch that.
I think
Yes.
to shoot it would be the bow.
The bow would be the launch, not the arrow itself. That's pretty good. Thanks for teaching the lesson. Appreciate it. Any other questions, statements? What am I overlooking? And again, when we get to heaven, tonight, most of the time when we're talking about chapter 17,